Hey there guys, welcome back to my channel, Crafty Concepts with Erin. Today I have this Eat, Play, Love card making workshop. It comes with this really cute stamp and everything you need to make 16 of these pre-designed cards. But as most of you know, I can't help myself, and I'm going to show you 3 different card options that you can create with this collection. I have a couple sheets of the pattern paper and then candy apple red and Lagoon cardstock. I'm going to start with stamping all of my images that I need for my 3 cards, and so I'm stamping 3 of these cherries. Now you can see that I'm using the double image. Actually, there's 3 cherries in this image, and then there's a single one as well. So what's cool about this stamp is that it has the inner portion, so you don't have to color them in if you don't want to. Now this was really easy to line up, and I wasn't even able to lean directly over my project because I would have been blocking your view, and I still was able to line these up. So that was really cool. I'm using the candy apple red, and this will lighten up quite a bit as it dries, so you'll have that nice cherry color. It also includes the leaf images to stamp and fill in the leaves, but I wanted a little bit of shading and depth, so I grabbed my dull green tri-blend marker, and I'm using the medium color to go around the outer portion of the leaves, and then I'll color in the center with the very lightest color. I find it easiest to go through with the same color on all 3 cherries, and then so you're not flipping back and forth between the light and the medium. And again, to be really quick, I could have just stamped in the inner portion of these leaves and even added a little shading with the marker around the edge. So I sped this up just to get it colored in and finished for you. And now everything with the kind of the blue-green shading on the stamp there does come with a coordinating die. So we'll be able to cut these out really quickly. I'm stamping my pie images, and I'm going to need 3 of those also. The first 2 I want stamped in this Lagoon color, and then the third one I'm going to stamp in the candy apple red. So there's 2 stamps that create the pie. So this is the bottom, this is the pie plate, and there's this really cute little detailing across it. Probably isn't showing up on camera too well. I'm using Toffee ink for the top of my pie. It's like a lovely golden brown crust. Yummy. I didn't get that quite lined up perfectly, but you know what? I'm totally okay with that. It's not a big deal. You could find one of the markers that matched and fill it in if it really bothered you, but in the end, you won't even notice. So again, we have the coordinating dies, so I will use a little bit of this Post-it removable tape to secure these into place and then run these through my die cutting machine off camera. I'm wondering how the magnetic die cutting plates work. Do they hold the dies in place? I actually just ordered an electric die cutting machine that comes with the magnetic plate, and I'm super excited. So we have all our stamping done, and for our first card, I'm going to emboss this piece of Lagoon cardstock. This is the Floral Lace Embossing folder from the core catalog, and you'll see it just adds a lot of texture and interest to the project. So I've cut a few strips of our pattern paper here. I will have a blog post later on with all the measurements for these cards. If you want to recreate them, you can check that out. So this piece I have cut to 5 1/4 by 4 inches so that we have that nice white margin around the outer edge. And I'm adhering it to the white cards and envelope card base. These are pre-scored, ready to go, and they have an envelope. And now this I'm going to run directly in the center. I thought to bring in my VersaMat so I can use the grid marks to line this up and make sure that I do actually have it centered, and it just makes it easier. So I can line this up, and then my little strips of this yellow kind of gingham plaid paper. I'll move this to the middle for those of you that like things nice and centered. And then I'm using my liquid glue to adhere my strips here. I really like to use liquid glue for anything like this because you have an extra moment or two to shimmy that in place if you didn't get it down straight the first time. I get asked a lot of questions why I switch back and forth between this white Tombow glue and the clear glue. And for card making, this is definitely my go-to. It has a different texture or consistency. It dries with a flex to it, and it works really well for cards. It won't warp or misshape your project at all. So here I've die cut this scallop circle from White Daisy cardstock. This is one of my favorite go-to dies for card making, and it makes a great base layer for your sentiment or your embellishments, and I love that scalloping detail around the edge. I'm stamping my sentiment. I have a strip of white paper here, and this says, "You bake my day," and I'm stamping this in the candy apple red, and this does come with that same stamp set. So I'm going to just put a dovetail in the left-hand side of my sentiment here, and then just for a little bit of added interest, I'm going to use my journaling pen and put little doodly lines around the edge of my little banner here. This makes such a big difference. It's super easy, but it kind of just finishes off the edges and is a different look than if you took your blending tool and just ink blended on the edges. I call them doodly lines, and they're fun to do on scrapbook pages as well. So we're ready to embellish our card. I am using my glue to adhere my little pie right in the center there. And then I'm going to pop up the cherries and also the sentiment just to add a little bit of dimension there. So I'm using my 3D foam tape, and then I'm going to offset the cherries kind of overlapping the pie. And then we'll use this thinner strip here to adhere to the back of our sentiment. Make sure you get that on there nice and straight. And this does tear. A lot of people tear the foam tape, but I don't know. I have my non-stick scissors, and so I like to use those. So we have card number 1 completed. This is a really bright and cheerful color palette and paper pack, and it's happy. For our second card, we're creating a vertical card. I have my white card base here. I'm lining up those edges, and then I'm just going to give it a good burnish on that crease there. And this piece here measures 1.5 by 5.25. We're going to adhere this down to the left-hand side of the card. You could emboss this also like we did with the Lagoon cardstock in the first card, and that would look really nice. This one here measures 5.25 by 2.25. And again, I'll have a blog post with all these measurements, but we're lining this up. And again, I've left that white margin around the outer portion of the card. And then I'm going to run a bead of glue down the seam where the two different cardstocks or pattern paper meets the cardstock, and cover that with our yellow plaid pattern paper here. Again, just making sure that's straight, wiggle it into place. And now to embellish this card, I've brought in our stitch brackets. I love how these nest. So I cut one in the candy apple red for our base layer, and then the second one is in the white daisy. So this will give that nice pop of red around the outside. So before I adhere that, I want to do some stamping. We're going to stamp directly on here. So I need my black ink. Actually, I don't want the intense black. I want my regular black ink. And it says, "I love you, cherry much." I think it's super cute. And the word cherry has a coordinating die. So I'm going to stamp the first part directly onto the cardstock, and then we'll pop up that word cherry just to give it a little bit of interest. I did pre-cut the word cherry, and now I'm going to stamp that down in the candy apple red. So we'll just get it lined up, hope for the best, and yep, we did good. I recommend before you adhere the word cherry that you stamp your sentiment below it, and then it's easier to center the word cherry in between them. So it says, "I love you, cherry much." Super fun. I think I'm definitely going to send this card back east to my niece. It's just a happy card, and I think it'll make her smile and let her know I'm thinking of her. I'm cutting little bits of foam to adhere to the back of the word cherry. And having the little scissors, I can trim those down super nice and tidy. We'll center this just like so. And then we're ready to bring in our embellishments that we created at the beginning of the video. So I have my cute little pie here. I'm centering that at the bottom of our bracket pieces. And then we're going to add a little foam to the cherries. Now this, you don't have to use the foam. It looks super cute without it, but I love dimension. So I opt to add the foam. So we have our little cherry, and then there's these really pretty little sequins blossoms with adhesive on the back, and they remind me of vellum, but sequin material, and I thought they would look nice on the card. They're super pretty. So just a couple of those, and card number 2 is done. We're ready to move on to card number 3, and for this one I did follow the inspiration guide for this kit, but of course I added my own little touch. We'll need a scallop circle. I'm going to emboss this Lagoon piece with that same floral lace, and then we need a little strip for our sentiment. I'm using that same You Bake My Day sentiment. I'm going to stamp it in Lagoon this time, so we'll get it nice and inked up. Stamp this right in the center of our white daisy strip of paper here. And then just to add interest to these pieces, I'm going to do a little sanding and doodly lines. On the candy apple red, I'm using just a nail file to sand off and reveal that white cardstock core. So that's done. And for the yellow, we'll add the black doodly lines around the edge. You could also use your black ink and just do a little, ink blending around the edge, but this is a different look and I think it's really fun. So we're just quickly going around, and these journaling pens, this is a 3 is the size of this journaling pen. We'll dovetail the banner here just on the right hand side this time. And again, just like in the first card, we will add those doodly lines around our little banner piece. And of course, like with all cards, you can easily customize the sentiment to, happy birthday or whatever you would like it to say. You'll notice the margin of white on both the left and right is whiter than the top and bottom, and that's because when we adhere down our yellow plaid, we want that overhanging the red cardstock just a bit, like so. You could just cut strips of red cardstock for the top and bottom if you wanted to, but this was easy and I've got lots of red cardstock. The Lagoon embossed piece goes to the left-hand side here. And now before we embellish, we got to do a little bit more stamping. This little piece of white paper here, I'm going to dovetail the right-hand side. And then there's a very tiny, cute little cherry image on the stamp set. And we're going to do some random stamping with that. I am going to bring in a piece of scratch paper first here. Whenever you're random stamping, it really looks best if you stamp off the edge of your cardstock. It just gives it a more natural feel to it and looks like patterned paper. So I'm turning my cherries each time just slightly. They're all facing upward, but I'm angling some to the left, some to the right, some straight up and down, and just to give it a more natural feel. We'll put one right in that little empty spot there. And now we can add this to our card panel as well. So I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive, but first I'm just using a little black ink going around the edge. For some reason, I just didn't want to do the doodling lines on this piece. And now I'm tucking it under the Lagoon cardstock, so it's just peeking out to the right, and we'll add our scallop circle there as a resting spot for our embellishments. So I'll go ahead and get this glued down. I like to use glue when adhering to anything that's embossed because it sticks better than the tape runner. So we'll get this little guy popped up here. This paper pack totally reminds me of the Pioneer Woman, and I know I'm not the only one because I've heard others say that as well. For those of you who don't know who the Pioneer Woman is, she has a cooking show. She lives on a ranch and lives that, ranching lifestyle, so they incorporate that into the show. But she, creates recipes, and her style is, well, it's very much like this paper pack. It's like bright and cheerful and happy. I have tried a few of her recipes, and they're pretty darn tasty. So I'm just kind of messing around with the cherry to see if I wanted it on the left or right. And this card, I popped up the pie, so I'm tucking the cherry behind the pie. And this one is done. You Bake My Day. Super cute. I'll go ahead and bring in all 3 of those cards. There's number 1, and then the second card we created with those stitch brackets, and then our third card. I hope you guys are inspired and want to give these cards a try, and check back for the blog post. I'll have that up soon. Here's a few more videos that I think you'll enjoy. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today, and I'll catch you in the next video.